It's time for the international papers now here on France 24. Florence is back here with us in the studio. It's going to be the story of the week, I suspect. It's the UN General Assembly, of course, happening in New York. A lot of the papers focusing on changes that have taken place in the Middle East since the Arab Spring, especially in the wake, of course, of the anti-American violence there last week.
That's right. A lot of papers are looking at how the U.S.'s role in the Middle East has changed in a Middle East that's changed. For instance, China Daily has an article today where it's looking at the case of Libya, and it says that, unfortunately, the horrible death of the ambassador there, the U.S. ambassador, is a sad case of the chickens coming home to roost. That's according to this article in China Daily. Now, it says that Obama and the U.S. government supported toppling Gaddafi, and what's been left in the wake is the establishment of this mob rule and a weak government, and that ultimately led to Stevens' death. And this would have been impossible under Gaddafi. So you just see that cartoon there where you see a toppled Gaddafi who's portrayed as a hive, actually, and a bunch of angry bees are running after Uncle Sam there. Now, the China Daily contrasts the U.S.'s policy and strategy in the Middle East with that of Russia and China, which it says favors stability, and says that what happened in Libya should come as a wake-up call for U.S. policymakers to act more cautiously on the world scene and to cooperate more with Russia and China. Now, there you see an article that's in the Wall Street Journal, which is also looking at this post-American Middle East. And this time, the Wall Street Journal is actually rather critical of Obama and what they call his weak policy in the Middle East. And it says that because of this policy, countries in the Middle East are not listening or respecting the United States. For instance, last week, the Senate threatened to cut aid to Baghdad if it doesn't stop Iran from flying planes over its territory, because these planes are suspected of carrying military supplies to Damascus. But Baghdad isn't budging, according to this article. And the Wall Street Journal says that one of Obama's catchphrases for the campaign is the tide of war is receding. According to this article, what's receding is actually U.S. power and influence in the region.
OK, well, speaking of US diplomacy, a lot of the papers also focusing on rumours that Hillary Clinton, current Secretary of State, is going to bid for the presidency once again. This is in 2016.
2016, that's right. This is on the cover of The Guardian, and this comes after comments that her husband, Bill Clinton, made in an interview yesterday, and he hinted that Clinton may decide to run for office. There's also an article in The Independent that points out that even though the 2012 election is far from decided this weekend, everyone was really focused on 2016. Now, she's due to step down from her role as Secretary of State rather soon. Supposedly she's going to take about 6 months off to write a memoir, actually, and then she'll make up her mind, according to her husband. Now, she's 64, so still young enough to run for president. She's popular, and she's never hidden the fact that she would really actually like to be the first woman president of the United States. OK, it'd be intriguing, wouldn't it? In the meantime, of course, the 2012 election comes a little bit before that. The candidates gearing up for the first presidential debate. That's right. In fact, this weekend, the candidates offered a preview for the tone and substance of the first debate, which is going to take place in Denver on October 3rd. This is according to an article in the New York Times. Now, according to this article, they carried out a shadow debate yesterday, actually. They both had separate interviews on the show 60 Minutes, and they poked jabs at each other through these separate interviews, mainly on foreign policy. Now, Mitt Romney has received a lot of criticism for remarks he made in May, but that were leaked last week to a wealthy group of donors. And a lot of people have called on him to shake up his campaign. And he says, no, my campaign is doing just fine. But he did, on Friday, release his tax returns for 2011. Now, that drew a lot of criticism from people who said that he pays about 14% of tax, and that's too low. But in the Huffington Post, they point out that Mitt Romney, he thinks his tax rate is A-OK and that it's fair and square. OK, and finally, Florence has given me all the best lines today. Smoking ban in Switzerland has been stubbed out. That's right. I'm sorry, it was cheesy, but it's true. Europe's outsiders are one of the last countries to where you can still light up. They held a national referendum to see if the country wanted to have a nationwide ban on smoking and enclosed public spaces. The vote was no, so the status quo will continue, which means that it depends on which canton you're in. Now, in The Independent, they point out that this can seem somewhat shocking because we have a tendency to view Switzerland as superior. Now, according to The Independent, they will come around in the end, and it's important to note that Switzerland has sometimes been a latecomer. For instance, they only granted the right for women to vote in 1971, which surprised me. OK, good to give that story a good puff. Couldn't help it, sorry. Flo, thank you very much. Flo with the international paper. She's going to be tutting for the rest of the day. Here on France 24.